Dropout has abandoned the progressive values that finally made their company mainstream after decades in favor of producing state-sanctioned pro-police propaganda in pursuit of personal profit for their insatiable greed is a take that's been making the rounds a lot this week, at least on websites like Reddit, Twitter, and Blue Sky. And surprisingly, it's not because of the Saw-based power fantasy disguised as a game show, but because of Guy Gardner.
So you got an upgrade.
Or at least the guy playing him, Nathan Fillion, who has spent almost a decade as the face of the wildly popular ABC police procedural, The Rookie. And seemingly out of nowhere, said show announced that they would be crossing over with the independent streaming service Dropout, meaning the studio would be heavily featured in an episode.
Tell me what?
We do shows based around improv comedy.
With various cast members playing fictional versions of themselves.
Just tell me what happened.
I got into comedy after being bullied.
Can we make them kiss?
Ooh, can we make them kiss?
And this announcement was really exciting. I mean, to see those guys from TikTok cross over with the other guys from TikTok. You don't see that too often, especially since non-cinematic universe crossovers feel few and far between these days. But it wasn't long before threads were getting thousands of likes claiming that this move from Dropout was, well, a less sensationalized version of what I opened with. That with this move, they were going against the core values of the platform and actively engaging in pro-police propaganda, coined as copaganda. And at first, this claim might invoke a, here we go again, another annoying word salad from some liberal arts losers with made-up words like copaganda, to which I would say two things. One, all words are made up, so kind of a weird gripe to have, but two, I think there is actually a lot more to these claims than a tweet can depict, and it is all so specific to both Dropout and modern copaganda that it makes my media nerd analysis brain very happy. Hey, you clicked on this, you don't get to judge. But before we can talk about this crossover, we should probably define that possibly unfamiliar word from earlier. So what is copaganda? Well, first, let's acknowledge the obvious. I am clearly not the best person to learn about the issues with law enforcement from at length. I like analyzing media, minored in political science, mainly regarding the Constitution and the law, and I'm familiar with the arguments about this topic, so I'm gonna focus on that perspective since that's what's relevant to this. And I'm gonna try to keep my thoughts out of this until the end, unless it's really clear otherwise. Sound good? Great. You see, America was founded with a fairly libertarian objective. Since the government has unlimited resources to leverage over their people, the founders intentionally made the government have a lot of guardrails that, theoretically, make it so the government has to move slowly. That way, them and their agents, like officers, can't use their resources to pointlessly harass, intimidate, or otherwise endanger citizens. Hence why the Bill of Rights primarily tries to provide the hard lines that the government cannot cross against its people, and the 4th through 8th Amendments are specifically designed to restrict what the justice system is able to do since they have the power to take your freedom or life. Those rights, while inconvenient to officers, are supposed to protect people from suddenly having their lives overturned because they looked at the wrong person the wrong way. It's also meant to make it as hard as reasonably possible to put someone in prison since, again, the founders did not want the government restricting people's freedoms unless it was absolutely necessary for society. Keep that in mind while we fast forward to the present, because as any American can tell you, the justice system in this country faces swarms of criticisms for essentially responding to the increased diversity of the population with an unspoken hierarchy system, where the authority given to that system means that civilians are subjected to the biases of those entrusted with enacting that justice.
A judge under fire for illegally jailing Black kids for watching a fight back in 2016. The alleged crime, listen to this, criminal responsibility of conduct of another. One of the problems, that's a fake law.
This is especially notable with any kind of officer, since they are authorized to use direct violence as a means of maintaining order. This all translates to people of color, especially Black people, facing increased harassment, brutality, and loss of life.
Looking at 19,000 incidents between 2010 and 2015, researchers found Blacks are 3.5 times more likely than whites to experience use of force,
as well as being more likely to have the book thrown at them for minor victimless offenses than their white counterparts.
New research by Stanford University shows that Black people receive prison sentences that are, on average, more than 30% longer than white people who have committed the same crime and have similar criminal backgrounds.
The existence of this issue is hard for anyone to deny. The numbers speak for themselves. But of course, people's agendas determine the narrative that those numbers contribute to. From the more conservative side, you'll hear that it's just a few bad apples that catch headlines in an ever-connected world. The outliers stand out, and across hundreds of millions of people, of course these kinds of things happen. Whereas progressives point to the system itself enabling this cruelty. The officers are undertrained, have too low of a barrier to entry, and are emboldened to act beyond their power due to things like qualified immunity making it harder to hold any individual actor accountable. But why does all of this matter? What does it have to do with Nathan Fillion or a bunch of excellent improv shows? Well, media, by the very nature of its existence, is always trying to say something. Even if it's not political word salad, there is almost certainly going to be some kind of message regarding values and ethics. And given how powerful it is to follow the perspective of characters we grow to love, their experiences can shape our biases and help us form our opinions without our even knowing. Take Avatar: The Last Airbender, a fun and cute cartoon that touches upon themes of genocide,
Gyatso, I really am the last airbender.
fascism and government censorship,
What year did Firelord Sozin battle the Air Nation Army?
Air nomads didn't have a formal military.
I don't know how you could possibly know more than our national history book, unless you were there 100 years ago.
the horrific conditions of refugees,
I'm sick of eating rotten food, sleeping in the dirt. I'm tired of living like this.
I hear the captain's eating like a king while us refugees have to feed off his scraps.
What sort of king?
The fat, happy kind.
infantilization of the disabled,
She is blind and tiny and helpless and fragile. She cannot help you.
Yes, I can.
gender equality,
Here, the women learn from Yagoda to use their water bending to heal.
I don't want to heal, I want to fight.
But our tribe has customs, rules.
and, appropriately, state-sanctioned propaganda.
Your nation or a life of treachery?
Choose treachery. It's more fun.
Which unfortunately, decades later, are all things that are incredibly relevant in the current news cycle. Someone who's watched that show might just notice those parallels and have their opinions be based on the writing of that show, even if they don't recognize that that's what they're doing.
Really, we love stories. If it's simple, easy to understand, and fills in the gaps for us, we are ready to believe. But the human instinct for storytelling is straight up dangerous to media literacy. Stories are sense-making tools. They help us understand the world around us. So when something is complex or difficult to understand and the media turns it into a familiar narrative for us, we welcome it with wide open arms, even if it's false.
And the nature of media means it always carries some kind of implication, hence why the villains are almost always punished or reformed in the end. You don't want to convey the message that the most cruel of us should be ultimately rewarded over those with virtuous traits. So the writers leave the viewer with the takeaway that cruelty leads to your own pain and demise. If you wanted to make a story where the racist gets a happy ending, it's a weird choice unless it's meant to feel hopeless and futile. And this becomes tricky as soon as a story is told from the perspective of police, which, as some would argue, is almost guaranteed to act as propaganda that tricks people into rooting against the very rights that protect them. But how can a cute cop show do that? But first, I gotta thank today's sponsor, PDS Debt. Look, debt usually doesn't hit you all at once. It's often a buildup of small things, like an unexpected medical bill or a few late payments that add up until you're suddenly underwater. And with interest rates being what they are, trying to catch up can feel like a losing game. PDS Debt is here to help you actually change that ending and get a real fresh start. They've already helped hundreds of thousands of people take back control of their finances. Whether you're struggling with credit cards, personal loans, medical debt, even collections, they build a plan tailored to your specific situation. They don't just look at you as a credit score. In fact, there is no minimum credit score required to get started. The goal is to get you debt-free faster and stop letting interest drain your bank account every month. You want to be careful with who you trust when it comes to your money, but PDS Debt is A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau and has thousands of 5-star reviews backing them up. Don't let another month go by where interest runs the show. You're 30 seconds away from being debt-free. Get your free personalized assessment right now at pdsdebt.com/Robbins. That's pdsdebt.com/Robbins. Thanks to PDS Debt for helping keep the lights on. Now back to the video. Now, real quick, I'm going to be speaking from the perspective of this argument, meaning I'm not going to qualify every statement, nor should you assume I agree or disagree with a given point. So remember what I asked you to keep in mind about how constitutional guardrails are a good thing, but yeah, officers won't like them because such inconveniences make their jobs harder. See where this is going? Take Brooklyn Nine-Nine, one of the most progressive police shows ever, where the officers that made up the cast were almost all people of color and or queer.
I've been an openly gay cop since 1987, so you're not the first superior officer to threaten me.
And while other police shows will often glamorize the exciting parts of being an officer, they gloss over, omit, or misrepresent criticisms of policing as we know it. while this show would do entire plot lines centered around these issues.
You and I both know you don't exactly look like you belong in that neighborhood.
I live there.
Look, 9 out of 10 times they get called to that neighborhood, it's about a guy that looks like you. Hey, look, we wouldn't even be having this conversation if you had your badge on you. Next time, don't forget it.
Oh, so this is all my fault?
But it's still from the perspective of cops, meaning defense attorneys, the ones that provide your constitutional right to an attorney and help to prevent wrongful arrests, at least in theory. They're presented as antagonists, as the bad guys.
You slept with a defense attorney. You literally slept with the enemy.
I know. Yeah, you never told me you were a lawyer.
Well, I didn't want to intimidate you.
Okay, well, not to burst your bubble, but I'm only intimidated by professions that have a moral compass, like police officer. You know your client did it.
Doesn't matter if my client did it or not.
Doesn't matter.
My job is to make you prove he did it.
It's up to you. But in 10 hours, he walks. So we will be filing a wrongful arrest suit against the NYPD.
I'm gonna buy Club Torque.
You were lying in an attempt to frame my client.
No. Peralta's point is legal. He can say whatever the hell he wants in an interrogation.
True, but that doesn't play so well with juries. You screwed up, and my client's leaving.
Now, yes, an antagonist doesn't have to be a villain. They're just the ones working against the goals of our protagonist. But we associate antagonists with villainy since that's usually the form they take. Not to mention that we come to trust the judgment of rational, good-natured characters. In fact, this problem is greatly exacerbated by their protagonist, Jake Peralta. See, Jake is stated to be a genius at investigation, where his gut is always right when it comes to a case. So much so that when he goes beyond the scope of policing to close a case, it's often portrayed as no big deal unless it causes some problem for the precinct.
Are you sure Whitman did it?
Yes, I'm positive.
Then the whole team stays. We have a better shot with everyone on it. But don't forget why we're here.
Because we're dedicated detectives.
It's because Peralta jumped the gun.
Yep.
This isn't a joke. You're ruining our weekend.
Okay.
If Jake says the guy did it, that usually means the guy did it.
Thank you. Everyone listen to Rosa.
Nope, I'm still furious at you.
In fact, 2 major episodes revolve around this exact premise, where Jake prematurely arrests someone that his gut tells him committed a crime, but without any evidence.
If it isn't Joke Peralta.
That's it, you're under arrest.
Case closed?
You're right, he did it. But we have no murder weapon, no witnesses, and you really didn't find any usable forensic evidence?
As a result, he has to get a confession or evidence within a certain window.
He didn't get sufficient evidence to make it stick. So we have the next 48 hours to fix his mistake.
If we want to bring this guy down, we have to get him to confess right here, right now.
An interrogation with a ticking clock?
Because it is illegal to hold someone indefinitely without sufficient cause. Guess what? That protects you from being locked up for weeks or months until a trial takes place. Again, in theory, because bail creates a lot of issues for that goal. But since it holds Jake back, this is presented as a bad thing, as an obstacle holding back our genius from keeping the streets safe.
Not ready to confess? Fine by me. I got all the time in the world.
No, you actually have 48 hours. I know the law.
Nah.
He can't leave until I dismiss him.
You've had him for 10 hours and 45 minutes. 15 more and we file a harassment claim.
Great, then I'll just keep him for 14 minutes.
And that's not the only protection against police that's treated as an annoyance or inconvenience.
I want my lawyer now.
You have changed. You used to go straight to prison.
Did Whitman talk?
Oh, he talked all right.
He asked for his lawyer.
We can't ask him any more questions till we find his lawyer, and we can't find his lawyer anywhere. I'm sorry, but the DA won't bring a charge because he says it's all circumstantial.
Also, the biggest issue when talking to police is that the average citizen does not understand their rights or the powers of police, like the fact that they can lie to you, which there is a strong argument to be made that this is unethical, given the power dynamics already in play during such interactions. Jake actually uses that to try to corner a suspect, though said suspect instantly sees through this facade.
Your uncle's neighbor saw you go into the cabin the night of the murder.
But my uncle only has one neighbor, and I'm pretty sure he didn't identify me.
No, really? Because you were so careful.
Because he's been dead 3 years.
And when Jake is reprimanded for this, it isn't because of the ethics, but because of the lack of effectiveness.
I told you not to lie! What were you thinking?
Thought it would work.
So yes, this episode informs the viewer that officers can lie, which is good. That's actually how I learned that. But the story also depicts this as something a civilian is going to see right through, not to mention being a perfectly okay thing. It sounds stupid and maybe even depressing, but since the average person knows so little about these issues, this is genuinely how a large portion of the population wind up forming their base opinions. This is a problem because in real life, no one can possibly be as smart as a fictional genius. But plenty of officers assume that they just know someone's guilty only for their gut to be wrong, either because of their biases or, yeah, maybe it's an honest mistake. but those officers desperately want to be able to bypass those guardrails since, from their flawed perspective, they prevent them from getting criminals off the street. But in reality, said gut feelings often lead to harassment against the innocent. But the show doesn't acknowledge this until the final season where Jake's gut is finally wrong.
So I arrested an innocent person?
Yes.
Oh.
He was in processing for 10 hours, which made him late for work, which meant he got fired. He's suing you and the department for wrongful arrest.
Wow, okay, that's bad. That guy's innocent and I arrested him, and now I'm tailing him.
I know!
And said final season was notably a stark 180 since it was made in the wake of the BLM protests in response to police brutality. Meaning, as Nikki Jakey would say, the show finally had to talk about the gator under the bed we were ignoring for entertainment. But prior to that, how the show portrays Jake facing these hurdles could wind up implanting the idea that these guardrails are a bad thing that keep criminals on the street and citizens less safe. And the rookie also has this problem, and then some more. Now, in this show, Fillion's character joins the LAPD at the age of 45, almost double the age of other recruits. So he sets out to overcome the ageism from all sides.
I don't like you, Officer Nolan. It's not personal. I hate what you represent. A walking midlife crisis.
And in trying to appeal to a younger audience, the rookie has actually crossed over with online personalities before, namely Watcher, where the two ghost hunting founders, Ryan Bagara and Shane Made, play fictional versions of themselves.
We have permission to be here.
That's not totally true.
No.
What are you doing here? Filming an episode, sir.
Ghost Files. I love you guys.
And like Brooklyn Nine-Nine, The Rookie is noted for being one of the most progressive shows about police, where they will also actively pull back the curtain and talk about the issues with law enforcement. I mean, before even getting into the writing of its subject matter, there are things that go into the production of this show that would further support these concerns of copaganda, that the very skeleton of this show is compromised with some cop-coded calcium. What do I mean? Well, the protagonist of the show, John Nolan, is actually based on a real officer, one who is still actively serving in the LAPD, and is an executive producer of the show. More specifically, he does this as a consultant, to ensure that the characters are portraying what cops are really like. So the authentic behavior of police is being largely decided on by someone who not only has served, but is still actively serving. Why is that a problem? Well, if you asked me what I would do if my home were on fire, I'm certainly not going to say that I'd be letting out shrill screams from under my bed in the hopes that a real man or very strong firewoman can carry me out in their arms like a princess deserves. And if somehow that was how I'd respond, I'd probably try to embellish to make me look good since there's a conflict of interest if we're looking for objectivity. What's more, law enforcement agencies are actually known to be very strict enforcer of trademarks, which sounds weird, right? I mean, it certainly did to me, because why is a government agency using trademarks? Well, you want your show to be authentic, right? Because the suspension of disbelief for television is much lower than something like theater. So we're gonna need realistic uniforms, the real life insignia, and greater access to real officers and equipment. Sounds like a good opportunity for a little quid pro quo, right? So many agencies, including the LAPD, the basis of this show, require varying levels of approval from that agency in order for productions to have access to those perks and to use their branding. Meaning, every single rookie episode where they wear uniforms or utilize authentic equipment like helicopters and marked patrol cars, those scripts are signed off on by the LAPD, who maintain an absolute veto power over those scripts. So no, the LAPD isn't making state-sanctioned propaganda, but they do have the final say on everything the show portrays. It's almost like that would be a really good explanation for corruption being largely portrayed as a matter of individual flaw rather than that of a systemic one. Nah, that's reading too far into it. I mean, I'm sure the LAPD would be so supportive of the rookie going in on the gross abuses of power we've seen from all levels of their department, right? I mean, you gotta admit here, there's enough to at least raise an eyebrow at. Like, remember when the Pentagon said they wouldn't allow reporters to have access to the facility unless they sent every bit of their coverage to said Pentagon for approval or veto before publishing? Remember why that was very clearly an issue? No idea why that came to mind, I'm sorry. Now, coincidentally, I've been watching The Rookie for the last few weeks while doing chores and the like, and I've actually caught lines just passively watching that I clocked as being arguable copaganda before I was looking out for it. So I was up to episode 18 and decided to watch that one more closely for this video, so it's fully random and not one of the most criticized episodes. And yet, if we're watching through the scope of finding copaganda, there's actually a lot to be said. Now, I'm going to basically be treating this like debate club, where I'm taking the stance that the episode is copaganda, so I'm arguing that perspective regardless of my personal take of an individual point. Got it? Great. Sorry, this is just a topic that kinda demands the occasional disclaimer. Anyway, listen closely to the plot of this episode and just consider, if you had to pick what the implication of a beat is, what would it be? The main plotline revolves around Nolan being sued for injuring a civilian during a pursuit.
Hey, I'm looking for Officer John Nolan. That's me. Even served.
To which his fellow protagonist officers repeatedly reinforce that lawsuits are no indication of an officer's morality.
Hey, heard you're officially a cop now. Got hit with your first lawsuit.
I'll take it personally. Being sued's part of the job. Union has found a lawyer yet?
Yeah, some guy named Simon Parks.
You're lucky, guy's a legend.
Saved my ass a couple times. I think I'm gonna lose.
Doesn't mean you did anything wrong.
So accordingly, the guy is portrayed as an open scam artist looking to make a quick buck.
I don't think I even touched him, and now he wants $50,000 to settle. Really? A neck brace. This happened a month ago.
Officer Nolan, please don't interact with the plaintiff.
It's called emotional whiplash. My doctor says it's from having to relive the incident over and over again the past few days.
This is the 4th time that Mr. Lynch has brought suit against a police officer.
Now, Nolan goes to court where the judge is staunchly and openly antagonistic to him as an officer.
It seems you did a little reckless running on the job, Officer Nolan.
Your Honor, I was in pursuit of a wanted felon.
Did that sound like a question?
You think this is gonna be easy, don't you? Just waltz in here, charm the pants off of me with your uniform and your dimples.
No, sir.
I have the power to give this man your pension.
Your Honor, I'd like to submit some crucial evidence we've recently received, another video of the assault.
Your Honor, any evidence should have been provided during discovery.
Whoa, things just got real.
Meaning that despite body camera footage exonerating him, the standard Nolan has to meet in order to prove his innocence is going to be much higher than the average civilian.
We have Officer Nolan's body cam footage, if you'll allow us to play it.
Sure. Sounds fun.
Oof. There. Can we just say case closed? Seriously.
Should we switch seats? Do you want to do my job?
As things progress, Nolan is tricked into apologizing, which is taken as an admission of guilt. This is because he is so deeply compassionate that he buys an obvious sob story involving misconduct from his fellow officers.
Time after time, police have gotten away with their crimes against me. And not one officer has had the decency to just say, I'm sorry.
Is this why you're suing me? Because no one's ever apologized to you?
Officer
Let me be the first. I'm sorry that you got hurt.
Well, Your Honor, in light of the defendant's admission of guilt, the plaintiff ups our financial demand to $100,000.
Wait.
Your Honor, we need a 50-minute recess.
Yeah, you do.
Also, the judge who presides over cases involving body cam footage in Hollywood is too stupid to know that camera angles change perspective and treats a side angle as more reliable than a POV.
I love a dramatic turn.
Let's watch.
Now, this is all about perspective. And from this perspective, you can clearly see Officer Nolan knock my client to the ground.
Okay, wait. Clearly, from this angle, it looks egregious, but...
Egregious? I'd say it looks like you deserve a flag for roughing the pedestrian.
In case you don't know, camera angles are most of what make fake punches look real for entertainment, which is why you would never treat a side angle as more reliable than a POV in this scenario. But just as the judge is about to side against him, Nolan is alerted of trouble, so he heroically runs to try and save the day.
Yes, sir. On my way.
Officer Nolan, we're not done here.
I am. Do whatever you need to do. Make it 1,000, 100,000, 100 million, I don't care. My TO's in trouble.
This winds up making such an impression on the judge that he sees he was wrong about cops and rules in Nolan's favor after seeing what a hero he really is.
Judge tossed it.
What? How?
Oh, when you ran out of there, only concerned with your TO safety, I was able to use it as an example of your selfless dedication to the job. Judge was impressed.
At which point, Nolan and his police union lawyer bond over being seen as the scourge of society.
Hey, I'm a lawyer. Everybody hates us, right?
No. Oh.
At which point, his lawyer drops this gem.
You know, this lawsuit wasn't really about you, right? It was about the uniform. Get used to it.
And if I can just pause for 1 second to note, I usually see that kind of language being used when we're talking about protected classes, like he treated you that way because of the color of your skin, who you love, your gender, etc. You can disagree, it just kind of felt like familiar language to me. Though the episode tries to balance this with a B-plot involving a corrupt officer being brought to justice.
I arrested Jenkins.
The robbery homicide detective?
Yeah. After an extensive investigation, we found clear evidence that 10 years ago, Detective Jenkins lied on the witness stand. Because of his lies, an innocent woman was convicted of murder in the first.
This leads to Officer Bishop having to confront a conflict of interest that she failed to disclose.
I had to step away when I joined the police because a family connection to a criminal would have kept me off of the force. And if they find out now that I lied and I left you off of my personal history, I could lose my job.
But fortunately, her judgment is so sound that she arrests her foster brother, who she sees as fully her brother.
Dylan Scott is my brother. We spent a year together in the same foster home. A year that felt like a lifetime. It doesn't matter, we only spent a year together. He's family.
Right after he saves her life.
I'm sorry, but I gotta take you in.
I just saved your life. Look, I'll go to Mexico. I'll be gone by the morning. I swear you'll never hear from me again.
No, I can't.
At which point she turns herself in to be held accountable for her lie.
I left him off of my PHQ when I applied to the academy because of his criminal record.
Also, Officer Jackson West confronts his father, Commander West, the head of internal affairs. Basically, he's the one responsible for holding dirty cops accountable. Because in a past episode, Jackson was told by one of his arrests that his father, who is famous for doing absolutely everything by the letter of the law,
So my dad crossed the line.
I don't believe it. Your dad is the straightest arrow I've ever met. Besides you.
had planted false evidence that led to his arrest.
He also said that my dad planted a gun on him. Got him sent away for life.
Oh, but don't worry. The criminal was nice enough to specify that he was in fact guilty and that the commander's actions were the only reason he was brought to justice.
Let me guess, Oscar insisted he was innocent.
No, he said he was guilty, but no one could prove it. So my dad crossed the line.
So Officer West takes the word of a civilian criminal over his personal hero.
And you believe the word of a convicted felon, a murderer, over your own father?
No, I pulled the file.
You did what? I never falsified evidence, never took money, never flaked a guy to make a collar. You have to believe me.
No, Dad, I don't.
And from what I can tell, this plotline resolves with them making up and no real confirmation on if his father planted evidence or not, which you would think a commander being accused of that is too serious to leave ambiguous, ? Hey, at least when I interject with my 2 cents, I make it obvious and do a voice, okay? Now, as a lightning round, here are some of the other things that happened throughout this one episode. Officer Lopez has an undisclosed relationship to a public defender and intentionally has him assigned to her arrest.
Doesn't matter because your lawyer would be pro bono. Free.
I've got just the guy for you.
Now, during these proceedings, said relationship directly influences the negotiations of this criminal in a scene that's played for comedy.
Who keeps rubbing my foot?
All right. Say I let him walk. What do I get?
Also, remember Jackson's father? He tries to use his rank to get his son special treatment on the force, but he realizes on his own that that's not ethical policing and holds himself accountable.
Are you asking as head of internal affairs or a nervous father overstepping his bounds?
About before. I was out of line. It's hard having a cop for a son, especially when you know what this job can do to him.
Also, Lopez decides to go out of her way to help a woman who is struggling to rebuild her life after 10 years in prison for a crime she didn't commit. Specifically, when this woman is arrested for a violent outburst due to prison changing her personality.
Barely a traffic ticket before she went inside.
Yeah, there's no way she comes out the same person. Prison hardens you. Where's my family?
Don't hurt me.
Where are they? Drop the bat. No, it's not fair.
Lopez not only advocates on her behalf.
I spoke to the building super about Samantha, told him everything she'd gone through. So he agreed to withdraw his complaint. She's free to go.
But tracks down her family so she can rebuild her life.
I found your husband.
Okay, now much like with Brooklyn Nine-Nine, the plotlines make sense in this universe. We know for a fact that Nolan is a good person that cares about his job, so a lawsuit that centers around him being reckless would probably be stupid. But if we're looking at this through a copaganda lens, it reinforces the idea that most lawsuits against police are people just looking for a payday. Not to mention that almost every protagonist officer is faced with an ethical crisis, and every single one almost perfectly navigates their decisions with no ethically wrong choice ultimately standing. Like, not for nothing, but on 3 separate occasions, this episode treats a conflict of interest as no big deal, and shows the officers properly holding themselves accountable to what's right. And if this sounds silly to suggest that subliminal messaging can shape a person's outlook, you ever hear about that court case where a greedy woman spilled coffee on herself so she could sue McDonald's for a fat check to satisfy her insatiable greed? Yeah? One problem, none of that fucking happened.
Now, Stella openly admitted that the spill was her mistake, but the results were horrifying. She had 3rd-degree burns on her legs and genitals. In fact, in the decade prior, over 700 people notified McDonald's that they had been burned by their coffee.
Stella didn't even want to go to court. She just wanted McDonald's to help pay her $20,000 in out-of-pocket medical expenses. But after making her wait for 6 months, they only offered her $800.
they gave her no choice but to go to court. So when the jury heard Stella's story, they found the McDonald's had acted so irresponsibly, they had to be punished. In the end, Stella settled for less than $600,000, but that was enough to get McDonald's to lower their temperature and stop burning people.
It's media that has made that the narrative of that case.
Those corporate lawyers are really good at their jobs. They spent years running a disinformation campaign to convince Americans that there was an epidemic of frivolous lawsuits, and the media bought it.
Now, a common counterargument would be that these shows often display these issues at length through antagonists that embody the issues with policing.
So show me your hands, now!
What are you doing here? There are cameras all around. You nabbed an innocent man. The DA won't file.
These people don't respect authority.
You grabbed the wrong guy.
We're looking for a suspect that fit the description of your grandson.
Oh. Yeah, young and black.
I mean, hell, that episode did talk about the Gator with the subplot involving a corrupt officer. However, the counter argument from pro-police reform activists would be that because these plot lines generally end with said officer facing consequences for their actions, it actually does further harm, because it presents these crooked individuals as outnumbered by virtuous ones.
We're in the middle of something, so...
I think I know what it's about. Look, whatever Officer West is telling you, I stand with him.
I mean, hell, even in a storyline where the crooked individual isn't brought to justice, that narrative can still wind up being reinforced.
And it hasn't always been easy, but now I have my own precinct, a precinct whose officers would never do to you what Officer Maldak did.
Not to mention that the system works at holding the bad apples accountable.
This isn't over. No. But you are.
Oh wow, I guess that means we should let the system police itself rather than demand accountability be served by neutral third parties. See guys, it's just a few bad apples. What are you so mad about? Unrelated, but please don't look at the statistics of the broader justice system. Effectively, the term copaganda argues that by positioning officers as the protagonist of a story, you're almost certainly going to play into the few bad apples narrative while undermining the importance of constitutional protections for citizens. So with all of that being said, let's talk about this in the context of Dropout. Now, Dropout has been around for a lot longer than you might think. They went from a scrappy internet comedy group,
Boned. First.
Incorrect.
Still a dick.
To YouTube staple.
The Tide Pods are soap, and that's not food. So please, stop eating the Tide Pods.
To shut down entirely.
We're going out of business. Sparks was sold to another company.
It was in Santa Monica.
And then, upon a natural progression, it became arguably the first mainstream independent streaming service, with the CEO that made it his life's mission to run the most progressive and ethical production company possible, in order to definitively prove that despite what billionaires tell you, there is unquestionably enough money in entertainment for CEOs to become rich without media's working class struggling to get by, and that their insistence on using things like AI or underfunding writing rooms are purely due to greed and not at all because it's necessary.
I kind of loathe the industry. I kind of do.
Sure.
I kind of loathe Hollywood and everything that it stands for.
Do you still pay for auditions, by the way?
Yeah.
Oh, so, okay, there's revenue sharing for people who perform on the app. They pay for auditions. We have this huge debate.
Yeah.
And I've always been an advocate of paying for auditions.
I mean, as far as mission statements go, it's a little long-winded, but if you ask me, kinda based. Now, while Dropout started as a sketch comedy group College Humor, they have evolved in a wholly unique way. Because when comedy videos became financial burdens on YouTube,
nowadays many of our YouTube videos are deemed controversial and don't make any money. Controversial can mean anything as small as, say, implied nudity.
College Humor was shut down, but somehow their chief creative officer, Sam Reich, managed to basically sweet talk a corporation into giving him the company.
So my offer was $0. They would end up in the minority stakeholder. So it was sort of like idiot insurance.
They get to hold on to whatever Sam does with it.
Yeah. Insurance for them in case things go very, very well.
At which point he took the Dropout streaming service that was up and running, but still taking a backseat to the YouTube videos, and well, turned it into a mainstream service among young people. I mean, think about it. The decades of history behind this company meant there were dozens of talented people with all kinds of backgrounds in comedy that were either newly in need of work or were veterans who could be recruited for the occasional appearance. Like Josh Rubin, he's got a lot going on, so he can't be a full-time cast member, but he could probably make the time for some seagull noises.
You want to do a seagull right now, just for fun?
Every now and then for his friend Sam.
It's me, Walt.
Mr. White?
And since many of these individuals had strong backgrounds in improv, they would have access to countless fresh faces. And so in a flash of real ingenuity, unscripted, improvised formats became the lifeblood of this platform, with such formats including tabletop role-playing games.
This season marks the beginning of our adventure into the world of Fantasy High.
Game shows.
This is Game Changer, the only game show where the game changes every show.
And even a documentary PSA competition hybrid.
The total that I owe, $95,441. You know, I'm gonna pay this off maybe before I die. So we have an idea.
This is like a stunt show in which we pay off your student loans.
Yes.
And because looking back, the concept was quite ahead of its time.
To our very own independent streaming service, Watcher.
Starting today, we are launching a subscription streaming service. Our shows are coming straight to you. No ads, no algorithm BS, no clickbait thumbnails, just the good stuff.
Dropout wound up doing insanely well, but beyond impressive numbers, there were the values deeply instilled at the heart of this company. While yes, virtually everyone associated with Dropout seems to hold left-leaning values, that is an incredible understatement when talking about the two main faces of the company. The first being Brennan Lee Mulligan. It's a pretty open secret that he's the most popular cast member of these shows.
In this video, Brennan will claim not to only be leaving Dropout, but also be leaving D&D altogether to focus on his first love, which is making American Girl doll shoes. There's farewell videos. Get tens of millions of videos. Yes. If we title a YouTube video, "This is why I'm leaving Dropout," immediately we're gonna get people to click through.
Partially because of the competitively Shakespearean persona put on during competitions.
Introduced to the top of the game as a champion, what do you think that means? Icarus flying too close to the sun. But it seems Daedalus, our little master crafter over here, had some wax wings of his own, didn't he?
But also for a show Dimension 20. For shows involving D&D and other TTRPGs, Brennan is almost always the one running these games, which means he handles almost all of the writing.
Our story begins with 6 freshmen on their first day of school, and the first bell's just about to ring.
Portrays the supporting cast.
You see your dad and mom both walk in, and your mom goes, "Well, hey there, sweetie, you're already up."
Manages the world building.
Our story takes place in the world of Spire.
And really is the central nervous system of this show and its messaging. Messaging that is not so subtly filled with very left-leaning anti-establishment values.
I don't know what you kids are up to, but I do know one thing. Laws are threats made by the dominant socioeconomic ethnic group in a given nation. It's just a promise of violence that's enacted, and police are basically an occupying army. You know what I mean? You guys want to make some bacon? He pulls a mask over his face, pulls a lit Molotov cocktail out of his mailbag.
And that's not even touching upon the statements made out of character, when he's just the heightened version of himself.
A lot of people have been saying that Elon Musk is a singularly evil Sometimes when you say true stuff...
I mean, it is literally a meme that when Brennan runs the game, the bad guy is always capitalism.
I love all the memes that are like, in Brennan's stories, capitalism's always the bad guy. And it's like, yeah, but in like a cool novel way each time. Like no one's bored of it, right? Like,
and it is hard to impart just how respected this has made him. He, alongside other faces like Matt Mercer and Critical Role, are largely credited with Dungeons & Dragons becoming more mainstream in recent years. Not to mention that his performance as Dungeon Master is a standard that countless DMs feel obligated to live up to in their private games. Like, it's hard to overstate just how influential Brennan is in certain circles these days. I mean, hell, take Date Everything, which was produced as a celebration of voice acting, featuring dozens of absolutely legendary performers playing personified versions of various household objects that often pay homage to their work. Like Dante Bosco, best known for voicing the firebender Zuko, plays the fireplace Dante, like Inferno.
Hey, what up, hot stuff?
And while the 20-sided dice, most associated with D&D, was played by Matt Mercer,
I'm Chance, your D20.
Brennan was included as the next best thing, the personification of board games.
I'm Parker, the board games. And away we go!
And across the cast, Brennan is one of the few performers being recognized for their contributions outside of VA work because he's not really known as a voice actor beyond DMing. Though, very important side note, they need to release DLC with Yuri Lowenthal playing a spiderweb, while his wife and fellow VA Tara Platt plays a desk fan that threatens to blow him away. Why? Because I need my GOAT in this game. What were we talking about? Oh, Brennan's important, you get it. Now, the other face of Dropout is Sam Reich, the aforementioned chief creative officer turned majority holder and CEO. You see, Sam is actually the son of Robert Reich, the former Secretary of Labor during the Clinton administration. This matters because he was noted for being emphatically pro-worker and union. In fact, you could argue that Sam's father is one of the most progressive cabinet members that the US has ever seen, and such politics clearly rubbed off on Sam. You see, rich people can be greedy. Don't know if anyone's told you, hope I'm not the one breaking this news, but this often leads to all kinds of exploitation in basically every industry, including entertainment. Because with the introduction of various emerging technologies, think streaming services and AI, Hollywood started maniacally moving to use these things to cut creatives out of the money they generate. Like residuals, where cast and crew are paid for every time a project is aired. Oh, that contract you signed 20 years ago said nothing about Hulu. Sorry, my hands are tied. Guess I gotta hold on to more of that money. Darn! So yeah, despite all of the shows from the pre-Netflix days that generate heaps of money via streaming, most of it ain't going to where it was intended to because of these loopholes. And that's not even counting the ways that new series that make it so writers helping to produce millions in revenue can't even rely on this work for a full-time income anymore.
So now they say a writer will write a pilot and the studio or the network will say, rather than bring this to series, so they give the showrunner a very small budget to hire maybe 2 or 3 more writers to help write these stories instead of the big staff. And the reason they make these upper level writers work for a fraction of their rate, and these writers have really no choice. It's either that or unemployment.
Enter Sam Reich. You see, despite the unexpected challenge of being a CEO, Sam has gone above and beyond to show that such behavior from Hollywood is wholly unnecessary, as well as openly laughing at his Nepo baby status.
From Reich to riches, how a rich boy became a rich man.
His mother was also a Harvard law professor, so between that and the Secretary of Labor being his father, you might say he grew up in a household with just a smidge of status and prestige. Yet, because of his progressive and generous values, ability to not take himself seriously...
This is like watching your dad.
It's like watching your daddy!
As well as his candor and transparency with how the sausage gets made...
Hey gang, Sam here.
He's both one of the only CEOs and Nepo babies to have a positive reputation among young people. So with everything that goes into the ethos of Dropout's brand, you might start to see where some backlash could start. Because as I had mentioned, Watcher did a crossover with The Rookie, and from what I could find, there was no significant backlash at this. And it can't be as simple as Dropout leans left, because Shane has made similarly anti-establishment statements in the past. So why was this such a perfect storm? Well, for Watcher, Shane kind of does that as an occasional aside.
Essentially, no victims here, aside from the rich people they stole from, which, hey, look, steal from the rich. Do it.
You're a Robin Hood.
Be Robin Hood. You're stealing from largely what? The rich? So yeah, whatever. Steal from them. I don't care.
Is stealing bad? Probably.
Depends who from.
So instead of these values acting as an integral part of their brand, they mostly act as a reason for Shane to be a viewer's favorite. While for Dropout, man, Sam specifically has all of this positive PR and has been placed on a pedestal of being the exception to the rule when it comes to CEOs, Nepo babies, and white men in entertainment, especially producers that cast themselves to be on camera. Remember the tool from Jeopardy?
The show's executive producer, Mike Richards, will take over as Jeopardy's full-time host.
One of Jeopardy's new hosts is out of his job just 9 days after being tapped to replace Alex Trebek.
Yes, the context is very different, but still night and day response from people. And overall, Dropout is much more casually political. The talent seem generally less restrained when it comes to side comments involving politics. And then Brennan... Yeah, Brennan's kind of the reason I think this became such a big deal. Again, he centers nearly all of his campaigns around anti-establishment, anti-capitalist, and anti-authoritarian themes. He is famous for monologues about these very ideas, and those monologues have been some of Dropout's most seen pieces of content ever. I mean, hell, remember that line from before?
Laws are threats made by the dominant socioeconomic ethnic group in a given nation. It's just a promise of violence that's enacted, and police are basically an occupying army. You know what I mean?
They're selling merch of that quote. Now, yes, the proceeds are going to charity, but I don't see anything saying that about the accompanying mug. And as the memes will tell you, making anti-police merch only to participate in, if you subscribe to this idea, copaganda is a bad look. It's also worth noting that Allie Beardsley, one of the other most recognizable faces, is similarly very politically involved and very anti-police, and neither they nor Brennan are in this episode. Now, in the case of Allie, that makes some sense. There are a lot of cast members, so narrowing things down to about half a dozen is going to be tricky no matter what. But Brennan is the fan favorite. He is the face and mind of what Sam said was tied for the most popular show on all of Dropout. He's responsible for the most viewed TikTok on the Dropout page, 5 out of 6 of the top for Game Changers, and while he's not at the top for Make Some Noises, that's still a show he inspired, is an executive producer for, and he's tied for having the most appearances for a contestant, at least according to IMDb. So how is Brennan not in this? I mean, he doesn't seem to mind playing a character based on himself or D&D. I mean, on top of Date Everything, he's slated to make an appearance on season 2 of TED as a DM that seems inspired by his personality.
Have you ever played D&D before?
At least based on that one line from a trailer. It's not much to go off of, I know. But his absence was noted and led to speculation. Was he somehow not axed? Did this possibly overlap with his paternity leave? Or does he personally object because he sees the rookie as copaganda? The issue with his absence is for people that do think this is crossing a line for Dropout, confirmation bias seems to be leading them to that latter conclusion despite a lack of evidence in any direction. And the problem is, while I would say Sam isn't quite as political as Brennan, he seems more than okay embracing his views to strengthen the Dropout brand. And that's not me implying that Sam is doing so insincerely. Not at all. He just seems to focus on things like social issues and corporate greed more. But it does contribute to why I'm kind of wondering how much of the backlash is specifically because of the ideas promoted by Brennan. Not that I'm saying the backlash is his fault, but rather that someone seems to have underestimated just how much of Dropout's brand centers around his views. I mean, I talk about this a lot, but branding can lead to seemingly random things causing seemingly disproportionate backlash, when in reality, this confusing outrage happens when you betray the ideals you choose to center a brand around. Like Ned Fulmer losing his career due to an extramarital affair. If you think about it, what we know about his behavior is really not that bad in the grand scheme of things. Like, it's bad, obviously, but if I'm listing ethically bankrupt things creators have done, I don't think it would come close to my top 10, but because he centered his entire brand around placing himself on a pedestal as a husband and father, yeah, cheating on his wife was enough. Part of this is because it speaks to a lack of integrity, especially in a situation like Fulmer where maintaining the brand requires almost nothing on your part. And then there's a word being thrown around a lot during this discourse, which is parasocial, where people form what start to feel like intimate relationships to the personalities they closely follow. It can start to feel so real that some seem to forget that this relationship is ultimately one-sided. But don't worry, you know everything you could about me as a person because we're actually best friends, and I can't wait to give a toast to your wedding. I hope I don't get choked up. Emotional speeches make me nervous. Though the point is that with these parasocial bonds, betrayals to one's brand can feel like a personal betrayal. And that's the sentiment coming from some of those canceling their Dropout subscriptions, while those defending this move think that this backlash is just entitlement stemming from people being parasocial. I mean, I have seen plenty of discourse in recent years about Dropout fans becoming increasingly parasocial towards the talent. But then, finally, let's talk about the primary arguments being made for the bottom line of this issue by Dropout fans. As far as the rookie goes, people pretty much fall into one of 3 camps. Either copaganda doesn't exist and it's just another impossible purity test from liberals with no leg to stand on. Then you have those who would argue that the rookie is copaganda, which makes this decision inexcusable. And in the middle, you have people who either feel that while copaganda is a real issue, this particular show does enough to not fall under that umbrella. Or it's just not that serious, and you can enjoy the show as long as you keep in mind that it is copaganda. And then as far as Dropout goes, man, people have way more thoughts. Among all the criticisms I've covered, there's also a sentiment that the timing of this is what makes it so much worse. Effectively, since law enforcement agencies are being abused in pursuit of political retribution, it's not the best time to do PR for them, even if it's a different branch of law enforcement. But what about the people defending this? Well, on top of the parasocial angle and the copaganda arguments, you have Sam's reputation. You see, Sam Reich has unquestionably built a lot of goodwill from people, so many that do have mixed feelings have expressed that they're giving him the benefit of the doubt through their speculation. I've also seen some argue that this kind of move was necessary for Dropout, since this kind of airtime can push the brand more into the mainstream and help provide security for those relying on it for an income. Basically, that Sam has properly weighed the pros and cons and has reasonably and responsibly come to the conclusions that said pros outweigh the cons. I've also seen others speculate that maybe this could be to help some cast members get health insurance through the Screen Actors Guild, and then there are those who see this as a chronically online take with no backing in reality. That it's just another one of those purity test things where liberals are seen as looking for reasons to push away people they align with politically upon finding out that someone is at all to the right of them on any singular issue. I mean, I've even seen speculation that this is all a calculated move by Sam to take those unknowingly being subjected to the evils of police propaganda and saving them by getting them to see the truth about police, since Dropout are the only ones that are gonna get through to them. Yeah, that last one feels like a reach, I'm not gonna lie, but anyway. While the backlash here is unquestionably present, it is hard to get a grasp on the actual scope of it. And as of this video's release, the only statement I know of from a Dropout associate is Sam saying this during a members Q&A session.
I don't want there to be any elephants in the room. I appreciate that some folks have some strong and mixed feelings about this. I can't actually talk very much about the episode itself before it comes out, but let's talk about how this came to be and why we decided to do it. They approached us with this, what we thought was a truly wild idea. It was an opportunity for the cast to show off their acting chops on network television, which is not something that we regularly get to do. For another, it was an opportunity to expose Dropout to a network TV audience. Not to mention an opportunity to work alongside Nathan Fillion, which we thought would be really fun. I've heard, obviously, the mixed feedback. I respect the position of the folks that feel that way. You have a right to feel that way. You have a right to light me up on social media, for sure. The last thing I'll say about it, it is like more of just like a handful of scenes than anything. We're like a B story in the episode.
It's hard to really grasp just how much of their audience actually care. Is it a sizable enough portion that would be a devastating financial loss, or is it just a few thousand really loud individuals? I mean, a Reddit user posted a poll on the subreddit asking for people's opinions, and while that is obviously not data you can depend on for a definitive conclusion, those responses heavily skewed towards celebrating this crossover. But the Circle Jerk subreddit, which mainly satirizes cringy behavior from Dropout viewers, have been having a field day with this. But really, I haven't seen any posts getting more than a few thousand likes. I certainly haven't seen any even crack 5 figures. And while some smaller news outlets have spoken out about this, there really hasn't been any response from prolific creators that would be more likely to actually steer the conversation on this. But hey, at least we know that with this video's release, we are still waiting for a prolific creator to weigh in. All this is to say that from what I can tell, the most common sentiment in Dropout communities is that this isn't great, but to imply this somehow undermines the integrity of the brand is a reach. Quote, "A small but loud contingent of the fan base is pretty upset. I can understand the logic, if not the degree of their disappointment. I don't particularly agree with the degree to which they're reacting, but I support their right to voice their dismay. Though if I'm reading other people's takes, I guess that leads to what mine is. I mean, how can you be on your best lookout for deception from my biases unless I lay them on the table? So, I think trying to argue that copaganda is not real in any way is silly. People inform much of their worldview from the art and media they consume, even if that's a sobering thought to some. And as someone who makes a living hammering in the importance of media ethics and the lasting effects of unchecked implications, it would be very hypocritical for me to claim that concerns about the subliminal messaging of television don't matter. However, if you couldn't tell, I follow Dropout pretty closely. I've watched them since long before College Humor suddenly started pushing a streaming service. And Dropout became so fascinating as it started to catch on more and more thanks to TikTok, showing that while short-form content has fairly mixed results when it comes to building long-term careers in content creation, it can be incredibly effective at sheer promotion and advertisement for a product or service. And as someone who has both experienced and witnessed the exploitation of the industry, even with my limited time working in it, it's really hopeful to see this social experiment of strong-arming billionaires into finally giving creatives their due. So yeah, I have to be honest. I am one of those people inclined to give Sam the benefit of the doubt when it comes to the intentions he's going into this with. But I also have really no experience interacting with police. I know, shocking coming from someone so pale they literally reflect the lighting of his set. So while that's my take ethically, I'm fully acknowledging this is one area of the video where I feel a bit unable to give an overly insightful bit of input. However, I have more thoughts on this if I put my content strategy hat on, because I'm honestly very surprised that this happened at all. Not necessarily disappointed, made that clear, but surprised. I mean, Dropout is very careful about their branding, down to how Sam dresses. Suit to pay homage to the game show host that inspired his career path while maintaining a bit of professionalism, but tennis shoes to make it clear that he's still fun and is making this his own.
I wear tennis shoes in my suit. A story.
Truly, nobody likes it.
It also helps the CEO not seem too stuffy and show that, he's ready to get down and run in circles with the rest of them. At least, well, that's part of the reason my background looks like this instead of how this area usually looks. That way, you have something simple and understated to show a bit of professionalism since this is an essay, but you still get some colorful insights into my hobbies over my other shoulder to help the image not seem too muted, as well as add a splash of personality. Also, the fact that his town hall type videos are recorded in a far lower, more relatable quality than Dropout's professional studio might make it sting a bit less if he announced a price increase.
For the first time since January 2022, over 3 years ago, the cost of a Dropout subscription will be increasing by $1, not for you, the existing Dropout subscriber, but for new subscribers. Charging more for existing subscribers? Who do you think we are? Netflix, Apple, Disney, Amazon, HBO, Peacock?
I'm being completely serious. When he announced that price increase, fans were begging him to charge them more money. That is how beloved this man is.
If you want to pay us more, you can. And if you don't. And continue to support us just the same as you are today.
But yeah, you'd be surprised at just how intentional branding can be at every level, which is why I'm so curious to watch this play out and see if the upcoming release of this episode winds up triggering a greater response from fans, or if this is just a small, passionate group that'll either get over it or move on to other forms of entertainment. And now that I have tirelessly and meticulously broken down arguments surrounding the threat of copaganda to the best of my ability, I really want your takeaway to be this. John Nolan actually has a rivalry with a local musician that likes to bust his chops.
No recipe, but make it sexy. Sell me some meth, please, so I can get arrested by this daddy of a cop with his daddy cop walk and his daddy cop arms and his daddy cop butt. Ow! Cop duties, cute and on duty.
I mean, come on, you gotta admit that is pretty endearing since John knows he's not allowed to do anything about it. I am really glad to know that officers can take a joke and would never use violence to impede on someone's right to free expression, right?